YouTube community, Lee Mendelson film production fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. I'm joined here today with Sean and Jason Mendelson from Lee Mendelson Film Productions. How you guys doing?
Great. Thank you for having me back, Higgins, and now you get Jason to boot.
I
It's
know,
great to
first
meet
time
you,
with both of you
Giggens.
guys.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, and this is going to be really exciting. We're happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
I'm stoked to have you guys on. I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of what you guys do. I've collected all your records so far. For those who are watching this for the first time, maybe it's the first time you've clicked on one of these videos. What exactly do you guys do with Lee Mendelson Film Productions, and why are these releases happening? What's going on with the stuff behind me?
Oh, I'm Jason Mendelson. I worked for my father, Lee Mendelson, at his company since I was 4 years old when I first did voice acting for some of the Peanuts cartoons and some other cartoons. Since then, we've made a bunch of Peanuts television programs, documentaries, specials, all sorts of stuff. But the neatest thing now is we found our original session tapes from Vince Guaraldi's work, scoring the original 15 Charlie Brown shows, Peanut shows, starting back with Charlie Brown Christmas, which was already a record for the last 60 years. But we've been lucky enough to be able to release these albums now for the first time as the soundtracks to some of the other specials from the 60s and 70s. And so Sean, my brother, can tell you what he does, but he and I have worked together producing these new records, and we have a new one coming out very soon.
Perfect.
Giggins, as you know, I produced these with Jason, as he just said, and it's been a real honor and privilege to be able to put these out. We've been putting them out at a pretty heavy clip. We were initially weren't sure how much people would enjoy them, but we're 2 or 3 a year now since 2023 of these scores, and the fans and the press seem to be enjoying it as much as Jason and I do. So it's been real rewarding from that perspective.
And the key for us, we grew up with this music, obviously, our whole lives, both personally and professionally.
Yes.
And the beauty of it is we didn't really care what other people would think because we knew how much we loved them. And
Yeah.
so to be able to release this, the most gratifying thing is that the fans who we knew love Vince Guaraldi from like a Charlie Brown Christmas and his other independent albums have really gravitated towards all of this music and the presentation of it. And what's really neat is I've known all the shows intimately my whole life. We distribute the old television specials with Peanuts Worldwide, and
Yeah.
right now you can see all of them on Apple TV as a subscriber. But what was really neat for us is when we found these sessions, it's different from the soundtrack masters we had for the shows, from the show masters. We didn't originally look for these sessions. We looked for other soundtrack, the best version of the soundtrack we had from the stems for the TV shows, and we
Right.
stumbled upon these in that search, and it's the original sessions. So you get not just the actual tracks that made up the cues for the television special, but you also get all the cutting room floor stuff. So you get alternate takes. You get sometimes, in many cases, the longer version of the performance that was maybe cut off in the show or muted underneath dialogue in the show. And that is what allowed us to make these albums because we realized these are really cool things in and of themselves. They're awesome for the shows, but they work as musical albums. That was Sean came to me when we first heard it and goes, Jason, we can release these as soundtracks. They're viable, historic, and beautiful pieces of jazz all on their own.
They truly are. I mean, I put these records on just to listen to, regardless of whatever special it is, because they work well on their own. Even in like, fragments of pieces, there's like, Linus and Lucy take eight or whatever. It's like you hear these different bits and they're just different enough to keep you interested. Um, and we talked about this a little bit last time, but I love the process of like finding the tapes and like cleaning them up and like hearing them for the first time. So like when you guys go through those tapes, is it kind of like a world of magic? Do you sit there and play the whole thing the whole way through? Or what's the process like when you work on them?
Well, so the first thing about that is that they're 50 to 60-year-old tapes, right? And so you don't know what you're going to get, how they've been managed, how much they've been utilized. And what we were pleasantly surprised to discover with the vast majority of these is that it is fidelity is at a height that
Yeah.
is sounds like it was made today. And that's one of the great features of this is that we're able to provide the music so it sounds like it was made in a studio in present time. Jason can speak more about the process a little bit and the discovery, perhaps.
The cool thing, like Sean mentioned, these tapes were probably spun once, and they're all different. Some of the shows are on different formats, and some things are still missing, and some things we've had to piece together from different types of sources. But for the most part, the ones in the 70s, like the one we're talking about today, Good Sport, was on a 2-inch 16 track tape. And it was never, as far as I could tell, it was never spun. It was never put on the reel to play out since they made the Showmaster in 1975. So what
That's
that means is they recorded the music, then they made the master for the show, and then it was put away in storage and never touched again until 2021 when we found it. So it isn't messed up. And so it was all cold stored like all of our elements. So it was very much protected.
yeah,
And what we did first, to give you the background on this, when we first get these tapes, we often get a log, and then we're waiting to download the massive files. And the log often doesn't say a lot of information. But whenever we get one that showed in the very beginning, the first thing we saw was it was 90 minutes.
yeah,
And the problem is all of my previous masters are the length of the show. They're usually if they're on 35 millimeter, they're in 8 minutes. So they're in 8-minute, 35 millimeter reels. Or if they're on different types of stuff, it's 25 minutes, 24 minutes of material. So
yeah.
as soon as I saw it was 90 minutes, we knew something was up. And that became, we then waited patiently for about an hour to get the file. And we first heard it. I remember I called Sean on the phone and we listened to it together over Zoom, like we were all doing during the pandemic. And we were blown away because on that particular tape, we heard the voices of Bill Melendez and John Scott Trotter and Vince Guaraldi and our father. And we heard them talking about laying the stuff down. And on that particular tape, it's a secret. I don't tell you what it is. We haven't released it yet. It's there is a process by which Vince is writing some of the songs. So you'll hear the first version of a song that became very popular later, but is never heard the way it was first heard because he wrote it and then he rewrites it. And then you get that evolution. So that's one of the many tricks that we can display coming out of this. We had no idea about. We did not know what this would be until we found it. And then every time we release these, we spend months just figuring out what can be used and how to use it. And then obviously the North Star is it's the soundtrack. So it matches the cues of the show first and then all the bonus stuff on top of that. So it's been a thrill to do that.
Well, that's a big thing too, is you mentioned the tapes not being touched since they were recorded. Like basically that's how it goes. Like they lay it down, they take the cues for the show, and that's it. So the reason why these records sound so clean and punchy and vibrant is because there's no loss of material on the tape itself. They've never been used over and over and over again. Even the Christmas record that's been used probably a lot. I mean that one's probably been it's probably see-through at this point, but these records really do sound vibrant. So like when you were going through the tapes and you're discovering all these gems and hearing things that you haven't heard before, does it feel kind of fly in the wall momenty to be like, wow, like that's how that song started, or oh, I know that cue, but wow, what's that? Like, was it just like all your endorphins are firing at the same time, or what was that initial reaction like?
So what's exciting is we've had the opportunity to meet a lot of the sidemen that are on these albums. And during that process, for example, Mike Clark is my favorite example because he's one of the first people I interviewed over Zoom during 2021. And he said, like several of these other folks, I'm not going to remember anything. I was a session musician, I remember everything. But then there is this momentary flashback when they start to hear their voice or Vince Guaraldi's voice or John Scott Trotter's voice in the studio between takes. And it's absolutely fascinating to see them time travel back to that point. And then they start remembering anecdotes about those sessions, where they were. For Easter, we were able to bring, on the Easter album we just released a couple months ago, we were able to bring Mike Clark, David Benoit, and Seward McCain into Hyde Street, which used to be called Wally Heider Studios, where they recorded half of these soundtracks, maybe a third. And the memories came flashing back just from being around that. And so from when you were asking for a fly on the wall, the term I keep using when I presented it to Derek Bang, who writes the liner notes and the historian, is that we see how the sausage was made. We see the peek behind the curtain. And as an artist, it is because he's so enigmatic in how he created these melodies, we sort of start to glean how he did it. how the sausage was made. And to me, it's not like a magician revealing its tricks. It's more like, oh, what an inventive way to like rearrange it. A good example is Charlie Brown Christmas. When you hear the stereo 2022 version where they have all the extra takes, Christmas is Coming is a great example. Like Jason mentioned, there was one we heard at the beginning of the pandemic on one of these soundtracks. Is you hear this entirely new B section that comes out, and you go, well, now why did he do that? Why did he get rid of that section, swap it out? Why did he change the way the upright bass is being played or the approach to it? How busy he's playing? And as a musician, you start to wonder, like, what would have been if he did it this way or that way? And listening to the music separate from the show gives us the opportunity to analyze it in a profound way. And I think that the fans have the opportunity to do the same thing when they get these bonus tracks.
And
Uh,
the cool thing too, the fly on the wall thing, again, I have known this music intimately, especially on the first 15 Peanut specials forever. I know the cues. I know how they work in the show. I've known it for my whole life, pretty much. We found the sessions to make the albums. One of their guiding principles is we're trying to make the song, we're taking the song from the show and giving you the song from the show, but you can hear it cleanly for the first time.
right.
So on the TV show, it's a monaural mix down and it dips under the dialogue and the effects. It's sharing track space with the dialogue of the characters and the effects. When we've done the record, it's not. It's its own thing. It's at the same level. It's mastered at the same level. And what's interesting in the mix is our guiding principle is if it's in the show, it gets to be on the album, right?
Yeah.
By obvious definition. But what's amazing is half the time we're listening to this and we go, is that instrument in the show? And it is. You can barely hear it, even if you turn the gain up all the way on the show master. So, okay, great. That's the track. It's part of it. It's so low in the mix, but it's there. It was intended to be there, so it's in the show. The best thing I want Sean to share this anecdote is we've heard things where we hear Vince. We hear Vince talking during the performance. And so, Sean, tell him what happened. I think it was Valentine's was one of the first times.
There's actually now there's three. There's three. Oh shoot, I don't think I can talk. We haven't released two
Talk
of them
about
yet.
Valentine's. Talk about Valentine's.
Uh, in Valentine's. Oh yes, thank you. So yeah, that is one of that we've released. So in Valentine's, it's this song called Freddie's Mood, where Snoopy is doing the puppet show, and it's his beautiful rendition. One of the cool things, and again, I don't know if I've coined this phrase. I don't want to take, because I may have heard it somewhere, but he Geraldifies the classical music like Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, and on Valentine's during the puppet show, you hear him say, 1 minute left, and you have to really turn it up. Yeah, it's about 45 seconds into that cue in the show, but it's there. You hear Vince say, in his distinctive Italian accent, or not Italian accent, but distinctive Italian
Different
leprechaun accent, I should say.
different scope.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
But again, what we're describing is when we're in the session doing the mixing, we hear Vince say this, right? And so we go, uh-oh, we got to go back and take that out of the album because obviously that doesn't match the show. So we go back to the show. It's in the show. Vince is talking in the soundtrack of the show. So great. We don't have to take it out. It gets to stay in. And
Yeah.
it makes it have so much more color. And the beauty of this, we've always loved jazz, and jazz is improvisational.
Hmm.
But part of what's so great about these records is they are it anything that Vince did is allowed because it's jazz, right? Even if it's changing meter in the middle or changing instruments in the middle, changing anything.
Right.
But beautiful about this, the thing that makes it so exciting for Sean's main gig is teaching children music and teaching children how to appreciate it, play it, perform it, live it, breathe it, eat it. These albums are what they were for many people. They're the gateway to jazz,
I
right?
completely
Jazz is often difficult to get into. Vince is the way to get into it. And so for Sean and I, you know, whenever we hear this stuff, we are so excited about it because we both have children. Sean has two, I have three. They're all into music, but this is their now gateway to jazz and hopefully for the next generation. And it isn't dated. It's not just that it sounds good fidelity wise. The music sounds like it was recorded yesterday in many cases. It
Yeah.
also sounds like it could have been composed yesterday. It's all relevant and current, even when it's not, it is. And Sean, I don't know if you want to say anything about that too much. Normally Sean talks about that. I just got so excited. I stole his line there. I apologize.
No, you make a good point with jazz because like jazz is one of the few genres of music that doesn't sound like it comes from a specific time period because you can do a lot with it in its form. now or 60 years ago with Miles Davis, whoever, or Franz Garaldi. So it always has a timeless kind of appeal. There might be glimmers of things that they use, like on the, I think it was on the Valentine's record, they use the ARP synth, which is a little bit different than anything else he'd been playing around with at that time. But so that shows a little bit of a time period thing. But
To that point, by the way, the ARP string ensemble synthesizer, which just came on the market, and he made use of immediately for that album, which was a
uh,
big risk. That is ironically, or in juxtaposition to what you just said, I would say that, and then the album we're going to talk about today, Good Sport, are of its time because of that instrument. I do think that is a distinction for those particular scores relative to the other 13. But your point is valid, which is these melodies are timeless, and these most of these scores could be done today.
that's exactly what I was going to bring up because, like with Motocross, the new single from the upcoming album, it sounds funky and 70s, but it's also kind of timeless at the same time because like everyone grows up with Snoopy and Charlie Brown. They watch these movies and it doesn't matter when they came out. You watched Peanuts as a kid. So in getting to this record, like what's your process for putting these out? Which one do you decide comes out? Do you just kind of what you're feeling is the most interesting one? Do you time it up with releases for, oh, it's the 50th anniversary now, and you're trying to go in that flow? Or so how did this one come up? How did Good Sport be chosen next?
So for Good Sport, it was its 50th anniversary is this year. It came out October 28th, 1975 on CBS TV, and it was a really, really good cartoon. Again, people can go watch it on Apple right now, get it from Warner Home Video, but it is a really dynamic cartoon. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in it. It's a big race between Charlie Brown and the other characters, and Snoopy is the mass marvel. And it seemed, but it's not as well known. It's not as well known a title as some of the other
Uh,
holiday shows. It
yeah.
did win an Emmy. It won Best Children's Program in 1976, but it is a lesser known piece. So for that, because it happens to be the 50th anniversary, it just made sense to try to get this one out for the 50th anniversary. It's also the penultimate soundtrack that Vince Guaraldi did. He passed away in 76, making the last show he worked on. It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown.
Right.
So it was something where we wanted to get it out for the anniversary, and it is funky. And to be perfectly honest, and we talk about this in the liner notes, Sean and I were struggling with it because there was not a ton of bonus material for this one.
Oh
The
wow.
bonus material we had was Motocross, which there's 9 versions of on the album. There's another 10th, 11th, 12th. And what we ended up doing was we didn't add the bonuses to this because we used another soundtrack to an industrial film that Vince Guaraldi did with our father called Bicycles Are Beautiful. And that was totally 4 different compositions. So we put those in as the bonus track instead. But because we wanted it to sound good, we made it a 45, even though it's a 12-inch.
Yeah.
Therefore, we get the 29-minute album. It fills the 45, but we think it sounds even better and deeper because of that. And you get the other bonus material, but that only came about after we'd already mixed the first set of it. So for
Wow.
this one in particular, every time we do this, it's completely idiosyncratic. It's idiosyncratic. What bonus stuff will go in? It's informed by what we have. On
Yeah.
Easter, on Easter, we had no bonus material. So we did that great medley that Sean described earlier.
I love
On
that.
this one, we had some, but then we found something that was more interesting. So we were able to add that. And then what was cool, every time we do it, the process is completely brand new to us. Even though we're now 6 or 7 deep on these,
Yeah.
every time we do it, it's Vince speaks to us through the music and through what he left us to tell us what to do. And
Sometimes
so
we have, and sometimes we get creative. Like, and at first, it's a balancing act. The word gimmick, I say sometimes, is a negative. I like to look at the novelty of the Easter egg shaped albums. That ended up being a huge score with the fans and the young people and the social media. We were pleasantly surprised
They
how
love
quickly those went off the shelf. We made 5,000 eggs, 5 different colors. You don't know what you're going to get. And I think even people who were going in to get it were surprised how quickly they sold out. So
Yeah.
we just figuring out how to get this to the fans in an appropriate fashion that further emphasizes the fun of these shows has been a pleasure for Jason and I.
And our goal is to celebrate Vince Guaraldi. Everybody knows him for Christmas. All of these tracks to me are just as good and just as interesting. And so it's like, why not let people hear what we've already known? And again, we make this for us and our families and our friends. We do this because we love it. And the hope is that people feel the same way as we do. The Easter egg thing was cool because we knew Record Store Day was the week before Easter. So we figured, why not
Yeah.
release Easter eggs for this? And then we had the opportunity because of the great plants we work with to make it that die cut shape. And then the mystery thing just made it fun for me. So, and for Sean. So it's the same thing with Good Sport. The original release here, it's a zoetrope. So it's the first time we've done this with a Peanuts record where it comes to life and you see the scenes from the show. But
So
specifically on the music, when we laid it down, the A side is all these great different songs. It's the first 8 cues from the television show. Then the coolest thing was we found a cue that was not used, that was written to be the opening cue to the show, but he didn't use it in the show. For whatever reason, he replaced it with a different song from
huh.
later in the show to open it. We don't know why. We think it's a great piece of music. So we then open the B side with that never before heard ever song. It's two cues cut together.
How
So then
cool.
the B side start the B. It's just part of the confusion with the picture disc is the B side says Q1. That's really the ninth track, and it's not on the show, but it just starts the B side. And then you get into all the
Yeah.
motocrosses, and the motocrosses. Some people really love them. It's the same song, but it's these slightly different variations and instrumentations throughout the show. And then
Yeah.
we get a bonus track from Bicycles Are Beautiful. But every record tells us how to make it each time we do it. And it is very exciting because it's sometimes it's frustrating because whatever we learned on the last one, we apply to the next one. But every single one of these is totally different. And therefore we make the presentation different. So this one, as we said, is a zoetrope and has those cool scenes. And again, this show, because it's so dynamic, a lot of Charlie Brown is very philosophical and is very dialogue or philosophy driven. This show has some of that, but it is also very action oriented.
Yeah.
Craig Schultz, who was Charles Schultz's son, was a motocross racer. And when he got his dad to come out and see him do the race, it inspired the creation of the show. That's when Charles Schultz called our father, Lee Mendelson, my son's doing motocross, let's do a show about this race. And so Craig Schultz wrote the liner notes too for this particular album because he was the inspiration for the TV
Whoa.
show. So everything, and again, this is now 60 years, this 50th anniversary of the show, but it's 60 years relationships between Lee Mendelson and Charles Schultz and Vince Guaraldi and Bill Melendez. So we celebrate that too with all of these.
Show's funny. It's probably the funniest one, I think, of the 15 that Vince scored. I think it's the funniest one.
I haven't seen it in so many years. I think I had it on VHS as a kid. It's that one. It's been a minute for me on that one.
Yeah, I only watched it probably through with a sensibility of like what's going on here recently for the first time ever myself, even though I grew up around this.
You should totally check out the show. It's a fantastic show. And you should totally in the album, our liner notes talk about the history of the show as well. And like Sean said, Derek Bang is the Guaraldi historian, talks about it in the context of its history.
Right.
But it also there's some little Easter eggs in the vinyl notes that'll help you reference the TV show. And if you see that on either Apple or Warner or whatever, the show is very, like Sean said, it's very funny and it's a little racy. And I won't say why. You'll have to go investigate that yourself.
See, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're right. There was no pun intended. But in addition to being the race, it is very interesting. I mean, watch the end. I think your viewers and listeners will enjoy the end of that show too. It is really, really cool. And as a child, often when our father was working, we'd go sit in his office while he was working.
Yeah.
And of course, he'd put on the TV. He'd pop in either a beta or a VHS of the TV shows. And this one was, I just have visceral memories as a kid of watching this because Charlie Brown puts this pumpkin helmet on to replace his helmet. He gets sent to the vet when Snoopy gets sent to the human hospital. But when he puts the helmet on and it's dripping down, I remember thinking, he's going to die. Like it's just a little kid. I remember thinking he's going to die in this race. He can't wear a pumpkin helmet. I just have these very early childhood memories associated with the show because it was one of the ones I put on over and over again because it was so different, even from the other Peanut specials. And the score is great. But like I said earlier, to be honest, we did not think this was the strongest score when we started this process. And now we've turned into huge fans of it because, like all of these, there's so much more hidden in the history of this music and in its presentation. So we think it's pretty groovy right now.
No, that's a good way to put it too, because like the releases themselves have felt different from each other. I don't feel like I'm getting the same presentation each time, which is exciting because you don't necessarily know what to expect. It won't be like, all right, side A is the show, side B is all B sides, or other stuff hanging around. I think the cover artwork has gotten more adventurous as you guys have gone on. They've become brighter. Yeah, I love the layout for this cover. It looks so sharp. Oh, the back cover. I haven't seen the back cover yet. It's cool. Wow, that's cool. Even starting with the Thanksgiving one, I loved how that looked when I first saw it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then I've been seeing like You're Not Elected. I was like, wow, this thing really pops. And then Valentine's and the Easter Beagle so far is my favorite. That thing is perfect. And you mentioned the eggs before. I still haven't opened mine yet. I'm trying to I want to open it, but I want to keep the mystery there. Um, yeah, because one of my jobs is working at a record store, and they were gone within a few hours. They're gone. So
I
those are hugely
we,
popular.
we had many people who were very mad at us for not making enough. That was the single largest run we've ever done.
Wow.
We did it because Record Store Day asked us to do it. We were happy to participate in that, which we did. The After Thanksgiving, the first one we released was Short Summer,
Yeah.
and that one also sold out immediately last year. We only did 1,200 of those, so we thought by quadrupling the order we would be satisfying people, but obviously we did not. And I apologize to all of your listeners because we did not anticipate or intend for that to happen. But again, we put all of our love and heart into these releases. And again, the goal is to get people to appreciate how great Vince Guaraldi is and was. And so all of those new elements, I mean, again, and Sean can speak to this better than I can, but what you said is very important to me. And I'm very appreciative that you said that because everyone is completely different. They're different from the show perspective. They're different from the music perspective. And every time Vince is experimenting with new things, he goes through the late 60s and into the 70s. But also, it is for us, the opposite is also true in that almost if no every single show has a Linus and Lucy, which has become the theme song to Peanuts for the last 60 years, started with Christmas.
Right.
Every single album has one. They're nothing like each other. So you
No.
get something brand new and total, but you also get that song's evolution and the different ways he employs it to do the characters. And
This
that
one
to me
has
is fascinating too.
Yeah.
This one has a Spanish style. Brum, brum, bum, bum, brum, bum, bum, Pasa Doble. It takes the bridge section of Linus and Lucy, which he actually chose more than the A and B section that's
A
popularly
lot.
known.
Yeah.
And he loved reutilizing it, retooling it for these different episodes. And
Yeah.
it's the best, in my opinion, it's the best Lucy football gag, pulling it away from Charlie Brown because it sounds like a bullfighter music score, but it's done to Linus and Lucy's C section. It actually took me 3 listens, even though we have in our notes, sometimes they're wrong, the original cue names. I was like, this isn't Linus and Lucy. The best example is the Valentine's Linus and Lucy. It sounds like it's for outer space, but this one you can hear the distinctive harmony associated with the bridge section, but it's just done in that Spanish Pasa Doble rhythm.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned him using different elements of Linus and Lucy because there's been moments where I'll be listening to the record and be like, that sounds kind of, oh, it's Linus and Lucy again. Like, because he can play with just like a little bit of a theme or these two chords and then run with it in a whole different direction. I mean, when you hear back these things and hear the talent and the skill that he had, what have you been learning about Vince's playing style and the guys he jammed with to keep up with him in that process? What's that been like?
So, as we kind of touched on earlier, this soundtrack is not only is the penultimate, it's the apex of his synth sound. And so, from a playing perspective, he is comfortable with new technology. He's comfortable with jazz fusion, which was coming into effect in the early 70s. And I've said with other interviews, he's comfortable with pop and rock sensibilities of the time, where other jazz people kept it in the trenches. I'm diehard jazz. I won't make something that's singable. Corelli had he was adept at creating accessible melodies with complex instrumentation. This particular show has disco. It has this bass line that, as I mentioned, the liner notes, Seward McCain was blistered or almost bleeding by the end of it because it's a constant bass line in the show. You hear it 11 times. I think they did it 8 or 9 times on the album. But most importantly, what we were excited about when Jason and I realized we could add Bicycles Are Beautiful as a bonus material, it actually harkens back to the 60s style, the acoustic piano style, the more ballady type sort of familiar sounds that you'd associate with a Charlie Brown Christmas. And
Yeah.
I like it because it gives you, as a listener, a respite from the constant, not only motion of motocross, but the constant barrage, if you will, of synthesized music, where he's now playing trumpets and synthesized arp lines, and he's also playing that what you heard in Valentine's, the string padding harmonization as well.
Right.
So I really like that you're able to hear them in juxtaposition with one another. Basically, even though Bicycles Are Beautiful was made in 74 and we thought it connected because it's motorcycles and bicycles, but
Yeah.
it also harkens back to his earlier style. And that's what's been a delight about this particular soundtrack.
And I think also to your point, Giraldi, it's interesting to me. I don't know, and maybe you can think of something else that's like this. I haven't been able to find it yet. Peanuts was not, there were movies, we made 4 feature films, but the Peanuts specials were regularly part of television from 1965, Christmas on every year through time, right? Starting in 1965. The other shows, many of them also repeated, but there was a new Peanuts special every year from 1965 through Sparky's passing in 2000, with some exceptions, but for the most part, 1 or 2 every year. And
Yeah.
they were on specials. So they were like movies, but they weren't series. They aren't like other things. And that went on for decades.
Yeah.
And in that same period, that first 10 years when Vince Guaraldi was still alive, he scored all of them with jazz, as jazz is no longer on the scene, right? It has been replaced in the late 60s. He literally started as the rock and pop movement takes off, Peanuts comes out. And not that it's counter programming to that, but it definitely is not the same as that. But it is the last place where jazz remains in the zeitgeist every year, every Christmas, and then every other production that came out through the 60s and into the 70s, when that is not the norm. And it's there for kids, it's there for adults, and it's ever present in the culture, just there. And so I think that makes this incredibly unique. It makes Vince completely underappreciated in the history of this, in part because he passed in the middle of this, what he was doing, but also in that it is something that is culturally resonant, relevant from 50 plus years ago, but also holds up. And again, maybe I'm thinking too grandiose with this, but I believe it holds up jazz where it would not have otherwise been in the mainstream, in the norm,
Yeah.
not in the booths in the cities somewhere.
Right.
And so I think that's always something we're proud of. And again, if this sounded super dated when we released it, we still would have done it because we love the music. But as
Yeah.
we talked about, it is completely, to me, relevant and current today. And that's why it's so great to, because again, this album has not come out before. Some of the music's been out in different ways in other places, but
Right.
this soundtrack has never come out. It's 50 years old, but it comes out this summer, and it is the first time it's come out. And I think that that makes it pretty cool. And the fact that people want it so much is exciting, because it's like, obviously they're agreeing with what Sean and I think about, and obviously you do too, Giggens, about this stuff. So that makes it
Yeah.
super exciting.
I talk to people all the time about these records because they just, as a person who loves music, they sound great. Like not only is the music cool, but like the experience of putting them on, the bass is rich, the top end is nice and clean and clear. It's a punchy sounding record. It just fills the room. It feels organic. You can feel the vibe of them recording together, which for people getting into records, a lot of stuff pressed these days is digital and digitization, which happens with a lot of records anyway, but things sound a little flat. And the first time I put these on, I was like, whoa, like this sounds really good. And my ears were caught instantly. So I'm like, when you guys are obviously big music fans, like, so when you hear these records and put them on, what does it mean for you to like hear the final product and like you can hold it now and look at it? Like, what's that mean? Like, as the process goes?
So, two things. First of all, a lot of credit goes towards Vincent Hudson, who mastered all of these, starting with Pumpkin. He mastered all the ones behind you, and he's going to continue to master all the remaining ones we put out for the public. We also had two great mixing engineers, Clark Germain, who won an Emmy for his work, and then Terry Carlton, who I've worked with on 4 children's albums and a musical that I was able to license. And these guys are through and through engineers and love the music just as much as Jason. All 3 of them do. I know Vincent is specifically, I just spoke to him yesterday, talked about this being a labor of love, and that's why he's continuing to work with us so effectively. That guy's a mad scientist, which is part of why the bass sounds so good and all these elements sound so crisp. But on the other point, when you said what it's like to get this music, My first experience as a record label with Jason essentially was a terrible one because the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving came in sounding bad. And I freaked out. I had a nightmare. I didn't sleep for a week because the audio proofs were so bad that I thought my reputation, which had none because I'd never worked in this arena before, I thought I was screwing myself out of the first one out the gate.
Wow.
Luckily, the second proof that they sent out, and me taking a leap of faith on the manufacturer saying, "Oh, no, 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 the first one always sounds terrible." We learned a lot, and so my point is, it's some of it's been harrowing, the process of getting these things to the right level for the fans. But when it ends up the way it has, all the ones behind you, I can proudly say that Jason and I have put out what we intended to put out, and people are receiving it in the way that we had hoped, which is positively.
And we do love, we were not as big of vinyl fans as you were. I'd had my Fisher Price record player and I had a good turntable, but it was not something. I still had CDs, I still have Laserdisc and VHS.
Yeah.
My vinyl collection had been, I had not bought a new vinyl in years until we did the Great Pumpkin one. And I loved the way it sounded and it felt. And all the ones we've made, we wanted it to be, like we've discussed earlier, of its time and of today. And that seems to coalesce with the vinyl. I mean, honestly, some of this was from the pandemic. We couldn't go out. So we
Yeah.
went to a storage vault. That's how we found this. We found this because we were able to look around with on FaceTime and masks in the storage place and find the tapes. And simultaneously, people were stuck at home, so they could take time to listen to things and listen to vinyl again.
Right.
And I think it worked out just serendipitously for us because we were able to do those things. And when we got the first final version of both Pumpkin from Craft Recording from Concord and then our Thanksgiving one the next year, it was a revelation. It was great, And again, it was our first. We'd learned a lot. We've done some things since then, but one of the two I've told the story before, so forgive me. I'll say two parts of this. The two best things that happened to me were and it wasn't on the vinyl, it was on the digital version in my car. I had one of the streaming services playing the music, and I had 3 10-year-olds stuck in the back seat, and they listened to the entire jazz album in a 40-minute car ride, and they didn't complain, and they started to go, "What is this?" And they were interested in it. And I was like, this is their first time they maybe heard jazz.
Yeah.
And it certainly, they started by goofing on Charlie Brown or whatever, but then they were like intrigued because they hadn't listened to an album ever. It's always name of your service, play this song and play whatever the song. So and then I convinced some of these kids to, my own was harder to convince, but some of the other kids, I showed them the vinyl for the first time. And it was so gratifying to bring them into that world.
Yeah.
And the second thing is this week, I was listening to Thanksgiving again for a project we're doing. I was listening to the vinyl on another test pressing, the same one, the one that's already come out, but I'm listening to it and I was totally into it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, we mixed this for half a year back in 2023. We released it back then. I've listened to it every time. I've listened to it a million times, but to hear it again this year, this summer, and to be grooving out to both sides of it, I was like, wow, I've heard this 1,000 times and I'm still transfixed by it.
Yeah.
And again, that's it. Ultimately for Sean and I, we are the buck stops with us in some of this for better or for worse. But the fact that I still like listening to this, even though I've heard it on TV for my entire life, and I've heard
Yeah.
it on the record now for 2 or 3 years, it works for me. And that's ultimately, that's all I can do subjectively. If it works for me and for Sean, hopefully it works for others. And I think that's been happening. So
That's exactly it. Well, that feels good, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out and chatting. We got one more thing. What's up?
Yes, Giggens, I got one more thing I want to tell you. I saved this for you because I wanted to talk because I know you have nostalgia. So I don't know if we're going to show this on your thing, but the pumpkin-headed Charlie Brown, which we also on this side have the juice coming down because he wears it during the motocross race, is when we hear 10-second cue, maybe 20-second cue of the Great Pumpkin Waltz. So the reason I wanted to just quickly bring that up and highlight that for you is 10 years prior, 1966, on It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown Behind You. That was probably the most beautiful lyrical melody and memorable one that I've been seeing in what I'm calling the Giraldi Renaissance. I'm seeing more and more over this last year or two, people covering that along with Linus and Lucy. They're covering the Great Pumpkin Waltz
Oh yeah.
on YouTube and on all the social media platforms. But what's really great about this particular album, although it's very much that ARP it takes the reins here, and it's very much 70s layered electric pianos. It sounds very synthesized. He takes that melody one time only, 10 years later, it's probably eight Peanut specials later, and repurposes it for that scene. So my favorite moment I just wanted to share with you from the show is with the pumpkin helmet is applied and he plays, and I didn't realize it, even after analyzing this great pumpkin waltz and all this music and bonus material, that in fact is the same melody done with the synth, and it ties and unifies all this music together. And one of the great things about Guaraldi's artistry is his ability to take a theme and repurpose it, but also keep it connected to the original thought. I just wanted to share that with you.
I had never even realized that. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen that episode, but that is awesome. A little good Easter egg
Yeah,
thrown in.
there you go.
Jason, any favorite moments on the album that's associated with the show?
I think for the album, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that unused cue, which is called You're a Good Sport, Charlie Brown, which was supposed to be, it's on the cue sheet, it was supposed to be the opening song and was not. When we found that, we didn't even know what it was at first because there is a You're a Good Sport, Charlie Brown performance in the
Right.
show,
Right.
but it's not the opening one. So we were totally confused by that. And then at the end of the day, when we finally mixed
Almost
it and
didn't use it. Yeah, we almost didn't use that one because we weren't sure of its value. And then at the last minute, we're like, this has value.
well, I loved the music, but it wasn't from the show. So we were like, what are we going to do with this one? And then when we finally figured out what was going on, which was not the first nor the last time where things got repurposed in a show, where things literally, obviously, a theme didn't work in the early show, in the 60s shows, sometimes the song would be 2 seconds too long, so they wouldn't use a performance that might be great. There's a couple like that. On the Great Pumpkin album, some of the bonus tracks are maybe
Yeah.
more musically interesting than the performance that's used in the show,
Right.
but we included it because it was just 2 seconds too long, so they didn't put it in the show. But they by the 70s they knew what they were doing a little bit more with that.
Yeah.
But in this particular one, it's just a really cool song, and then it's fun to get that and to think about this is what Vince wrote to open the show, and it wasn't used. And to try to figure out why that is interesting, and then to hear it and go, if you watch the show with it, like the Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz kind of thing, you can get really excited with trying to, and for everybody can, there is no right answer. Everybody can interpret however they want. And that's part of the joy of this. You can take this, it's Vince is for everybody.
The unused version just happens to not have all that synth on top of it. So you also get the opportunity to hear a smoother chordal version of the title track. And so that's another reason it's special.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I get both worlds from that for sure. Well, guys, I mean, so some wrapping up thoughts for you. Like, what do you want the fans to get out of this one? And obviously, there's more to come from you guys. But like for now, what's the reaction you're looking for this one beyond enjoying?
Me, for me, this is the first Peanuts Zoetrope album ever. And I was a little nervous because I'm a Luddite. I'm bad with technology, but I figured out how to make this work. I put my record player out in the sunshine to make it work. There's a bunch of other ways to do it, but to see the scenes come to life on a record as you're listening to it is an experience that everyone should have. So I'm excited about and that most particularly about this, and I'm excited that people go back and watch this show once they soak in the soundtrack.
And Drew Tetz did the Zoetrope design, and he made a video for us. So when you get the record, there's a QR code on the front, and we put it. I was so paranoid that people wouldn't know how to do it. We put it like even on there's the same QR code that can tell you how to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. There's a strobe thing you can use as a
Yes.
strobe app that'll do it, or you can do it outside on your phone. There's all these different ways to do it. But even just looking at it itself, it's just cool because you have so much art from the show, the scenes themselves on the record itself, but also in all the liner notes, like Sean is holding up now. I don't know if you see it when he's not talking, but it's all in there. And again, for us, we're celebrating Vince Guaraldi's legacy. We're celebrating our father's legacy as the producer of these shows, and Charles Schultz's legacy and Bill Melendez's legacy. And we try to present it. When you get this, you're getting all the great music. You're getting all the great art. You're getting all the history if you're interested. Sean, who is a great musician and songwriter, has a musicological report in there. And it's all fun and hopefully brings you back to the 70s. Or if you've never been to the 70s, it brings you there for the first time in a very interesting American, often San Francisco Bay Area point of view that pulls you through all these different, pieces that go together. And again, we put a lot of thought into how we curate and steward these, and the same going forward. We love doing these. We think it's really cool, and we hope everybody really enjoys it. And for the future, you asked the question. We often do the anniversaries. Sometimes we just do it when Vince tells us to, based on what's going on with the music. And so part of how we do the whole planning on this. And we don't have anything set in stone after this. This is the big release in July. There's still the old.
We intend to release more, to be clear.
Yes, yes, yes. But there's nothing that is defined yet. I know a lot of people speculate about all this, and sometimes they may be right because it's logical, it makes sense, but it's also just, we're still looking for stuff too. There's still stuff we haven't found. So that's part of it.
Thank you for having us on, Giggins, and thank you for continuing to be a fan of Peanuts and the music, obviously in particular.
I'm happy to have you guys on anytime. This is fun to chat because I'm a nerd about this stuff. I mean, Peanuts fan my whole life. One more thing before you guys go. If you're looking for ideas for like a Black Friday record store day, like I think for like the Thanksgiving record, do like a piece of toast, like a toast shaped.
Yes, pop out of the toaster. Yes, that's a very good idea. I appreciate that. We will take that under advisement for the future. The beauty of this is because it is Peanuts, it is so universal, and they made everything. There's something for every holiday. There's something
Yeah,
for everything. And I think that's a very good idea.
I'll have my people call your people.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much. This was an absolute honor to chat with you guys. You're doing incredible work. You're keeping that flame alive, and it means a lot for music fans and for Peanuts fans across the world that this stuff exists and it's taken care of with so much heart. You can tell the emotion and the care put into these packages. So, thank you guys so much. Thanks for coming
Thank
by.
you. Thank you
Thank
so much. Much appreciate you.
Yes, very much. Thank you.